hydration, nutrition, sports nutrition, steroids, human growth hormone. Anybody that's actually in the athletic world knows that these things are all over the place. We've seen the consequences of steroid use back in the 70s and 80s. I have a friend who played for the Cleveland Browns, went to high school with me. He was a year behind me. Total physical specimen last year, dropped dead. Just fell over dead. And you got to wonder, was it the steroid use? And who knows? That's a whole nother book, a whole nother discussion. But, with all the latest fangled concoctions that the chemists have come up with for athletic nutrition and dietary supplements and stuff, what's your thoughts about those types of substances?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about your friend. That's very unfortunate, tragic that he died at such a young age. I think with reference to some of the substances that you're talking about, the steroids and human growth hormone, the best advice I can give any athlete is to stay away from it. That what we know is very beneficial for athletes is really just to establish a healthy diet. And that means it sounds it might sound old-fashioned to some of the younger athletes, but it's something that we know works. If you look at just getting the proper amount of grains, vegetables, fruits, milks, meats, beans, a good balanced diet every day, and that you have to make sure that your diet really matches the amount of nutrition, energy that you need to participate in your desired sport, then that's healthy. What's not healthy is when you start to depend on certain drugs that are illegal, even some legal drugs to give you more energy, or you're taking something because you think it's going to produce better muscle, more muscle mass, whatever, make you more powerful, more competitive. In the long run, we know that all these substances have very significant consequences that can place you at in a high-risk category for developing an injury. And so the important thing is really just to work with the resources that you have, your teen doctor, your coach, your parents, to develop a healthy diet and just stick to it and stay away from the drugs and other things that might be tempting. If you're a good athlete, you're gonna get better. You don't necessarily need that stuff, even though you've seen some athletes have success with steroids and that. But again, the long-term effects of those do not have very healthy consequences, and the best advice you can give any athlete is just to stay away from them.
Yes, in fact, I'm thinking as a kid was a year ahead of me, was a power lifter, and he was huge into steroids, and he made it till about, age 45. And he also this guy looked like the Hulk. He was huge. And he just dropped dead at age, 45. Just same thing like Stu Toll. God rest in peace. But again, long-term consequences that nobody back then thought of. Back then when they were taking those big vials of B12 injectable,
right.
Zapping. Anyway, that was rampant back then, and now that's 30 years later. All you see these athletes suffering the consequences. It's too bad we didn't know what we know now back then.
Right, but it's the same. It's drug, whether it's a drug or a training program. The point is that there are long-term consequences. When you're an athlete, what you do every day, whether it's the drug that you want to use or the training technique that you want to use, you've got to look at it and you've got to say, is this healthy for me to be doing every day? What's going to be the long-term consequence? Because if you do something and you get an injury, the consequences of that are basically going to be time away from sports, and the more significant injuries, it's going to be time away from school. It could end your athletic career early, and like I said earlier in the program, the most important thing is that some of these injuries can lead to a lifelong disability, and it can restrict your ability to work, and it can, even more importantly, restrict your ability to enjoy athletic activity as a way to stay physically fit. And we know that having healthy bones, muscles, and joints is the most essential factor in staying physically active. And we know that being physically active is important to staying healthy. So it all comes together. You just have to think about the consequences of what you do when you participate in sports.